Novo Nordisk and UnitedHealth stock are trading near their 52-week lows as the companies faced headwinds that are bringing down their valuations. Investors are circling, trying to consider these near their 52-week lows and buying opportunities on these dips. But they want to know, and they're asking me, which one is the better stock to buy, Novo Nordisk or UnitedHealth? Now, I know one is a healthcare, the other one is pharmaceutical, and so it's not an apples to apples comparison. But I also know that many investors are looking at these two and trying to decide which one to add to their portfolios. So, for those of you, I'm going to compare these two, looking at revenue growth, profit margins, returns on invested capital, and then I'll also share with you my proprietary discounted cash flow calculations for these two and let you know which one I think is the better investment at current market prices for long-term investors. So let's take a look.
I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
Starting with the revenue growth comparison. UnitedHealth is a much larger company. It had 145 billion in revenue in 2015. It's been able to increase that at a compounded annual growth rate of 10.8%, which I think is impressive for a company of this size in this industry, up to 386 billion in the most recent trailing 12-month period. Meanwhile, Novo Nordisk has also increased its revenue from 15.7 billion in 2015 all the way up to 49.3 billion in the most recent trailing 12-month period for a faster 12.8% compounded annual growth rate, nearly tripling from its 2015 revenue total. Looking ahead over the next few quarters and next few years, Novo Nordisk revenue growth is likely to be much better than UnitedHealth Group. UnitedHealth Group likely to generate an increasing revenue growth rate next year as the company reprices some of its policies to account for the higher cost it's experiencing. So revenue growth will likely be better in 2026 than it is in 2025. But also UnitedHealth is expecting to lose a large percentage or a large amount of its customers as a result of higher prices. And as a result of just customer selection, it might just choose, and management has been talking about exiting some markets where it doesn't feel like it can serve those customers effectively at a cost that generates a reasonable profit margin for the company. Meanwhile, Novo Nordisk is battling with competition in two forms. Number one, Eli Lilly has better treatments or more effective treatments for weight loss and diabetes in the fast-growing GLP-1 segment. On the other hand, Novo Nordisk is battling with compounders offering lower priced versions of those same weight loss and diabetes treatment. So Novo Nordisk said unless litigation is successful this year to stop compounders, that revenue growth will be significantly slower in the second half of the year compared to the first half of the year. If litigation is successful, that could be a huge tailwind for Novo Nordisk stock investors that have already seen the stock price crash following the announcement from the management team lowering the outlook for 2025. So that could be a positive tailwind, if not by the end of this year, perhaps the start of next year, if they can get litigation to effectively stop compounders from selling those drugs in the marketplace in the United States. The next thing I wanted to compare these two on is the operating profit margin, and you can see the clear distinction here. Novo Nordisk, 47.7% operating profit margin, up from 43%, way ahead of UnitedHealth Group with an operating profit margin of just 7.3%. And UnitedHealth Group's operating margins are likely to move lower for the back half of this year and still remain low next year and only start improving in 2027, according to the discussions I've seen management have with Wall Street analysts. And you've probably seen me make several videos of UnitedHealth's management team discussing why their profit margins are lower, how they under anticipated the increase in cost by 6.5 billion for this year, and how their inflexible pricing plans disallowed them from raising prices mid-year on a large percentage of its customer base, and how their value-based care patients are not going to start meaningfully being additive to their profit margins until maybe 2027. And so several headwinds are weighing on United Health's operating margins, which are likely to keep the company's margins on the lower end here for at least the next couple of years. The next thing I wanted to compare these two on is the return on invested capital. And again, Novo Nordisk better than United Health in this regard. But Novo Nordisk, its returns on its ROIC is declining meaningfully to 27.6%, down from much higher levels, and albeit unsustainable levels, 2016, 17, and 18. Meanwhile, United Health has steadily improved its return on invested capital from 7.3 to 9.7%. Not very strong improvements in return on invested capital, and not much higher than the company's weighted average cost of capital. So again, advantage to Novo Nordisk here by a large amount. So now that we looked at some critical financial metrics, performance metrics, let's look at valuation. This is my proprietary discounted cash flow model for Novo Nordisk, and I calculated an intrinsic value per share for this stock at $127. The current market price is $49.87, a significant undervaluation for Novo Nordisk stock. The weighted average cost of capital, 8.14%. If you do the ROIC divided by WACC, which is something I look at when I'm evaluating companies, Novo Nordisk well ahead of United Health, and a margin almost 4x, 3 to 4x of ROIC to WACC, which is a great margin in that metric. Meanwhile, United Health, I also did a discounted cash flow valuation, and I found its intrinsic value at $434. The current market price is $252. So I also find an undervaluation here. But United Health's weighted average cost of capital, I calculated at 10.3%, and its ROIC is below this. So its ROIC to WACC is less than 1, which is significantly below of Novo Nordisk, and also below the critical number of 1, a 1-to-1 ratio, where the ROIC is at least greater than the WACC, which is a metric we use to determine if a company is adding shareholder value. And if the ROIC is below the WACC, then you're not really adding shareholder value, because it's costing you more to retain that equity in the business than you're generating from that equity. So if that sustains for a longer period of time, then it's almost better for that company to just return capital to shareholders instead of reinvesting capital into the business. And United Health is not doing that, doesn't have a uh, it doesn't have a retention ratio of a 0, which would mean a retention ratio of 0 means that the company's returning all the capital, all the cash it's generating from the business, all the earnings it's generating from the business back to shareholders, and it's not keeping any of those profits to reinvest into the business. So in many of the critical metrics, uh, Novo Nordisk is better than United Health. And the last metric I'll compare is another valuation metric, the forward price to earnings ratio. And even in this regard, Novo Nordisk is selling at a lower valuation at 12, compared to United Health at 15.65. So the one most obvious advantage here for United Health compared to Novo Nordisk, because everything we looked at here on screen, it pointed to Novo having a huge advantage, which is true. But the one understated factor here that's not reflected in what I shared with you is the riskiness of the cash flows. Novo Nordisk needs to invest significantly in research and development continuously, and be successful in developing uh, treatments that generate hundreds of millions, if not billions, in sales. United Health doesn't need to do that. So it doesn't have that product risk. It can continue to generate and, attract customers as customers enter the labor force, and as it bids for contracts, and as regulations in the United States have. So it's not it's not risk. It doesn't have that risk exposure to needing to develop new products in order to sustain growth. Novo Nordisk does need to do that. So that's the one main factor that gives an advantage to UnitedHealth. All that being said, if I had to pick one of these two, I would pick Novo Nordisk as the better stock to buy. I like both of them. I have both of them rated as a buy, but if I had to pick just one, I would pick Novo Nordisk as the better stock to buy.
Hey everyone, so many of you have been asking about my investing strategy, and I'm excited to announce that I've written a book that's available for sale now that describes my 6-step investing framework for evaluating stocks. I've added the link in the description below.